Alright, let's see how this goes. I mean, I don't know how this is going to go, but it's going to be cool. I mean, we're all together in the same chat for probably the first time ever, but yeah, let's go with it and see how we go. So, hi everyone, and welcome to this very special FlyJuly seminar panel. I don't really know what to call it. We're here just to have a bit of fun and have a chat with you guys. So, if you're not already aware, FlyJuly is an incentive already put together by the guys at Orbx with the idea of inspiring and helping simmers and gamers and stuff try and understand a little bit more about flight simulation. And throughout the entire month of July, they've put on loads of sales, events, and all sorts of other cool stuff, and hopefully this panel and this discussion is really going to be another part of that whole FlyJuly series, where we got loads of developers and several other community members to talk about the future of flight simulation. So ideally what we've hoped, and we'll see by the end of this conversation, because we haven't done any kind of preparation or anything, is we're going to talk about the future of flight simulation from a variety of different perspectives and from a range of different people with lots of different experience and insight into very special fields. So we've been joined by media partners, we've been joined by developers and other community members as well, and hopefully collectively we can come up with some answers to some of the questions we've seen in the community and some of the commentary as well. So today I am joined by 5 other fantastic people of part of this flight simulation community. So I just figured we can go around the room and just say very quickly who we are and what we do. And if we can start with you, Sergio, that would be great.
Oh, cool, thanks. Hey, everyone. I am Sergio from helisimmer.com. And basically what I do is I nag people like Jarrad, poor Jarrad, to add helipads to every single scenery out there. But seriously now, I pretty much do what you do actually, Calum, and try to inform and educate the community about something very particular, which is helicopter flight simulation. That's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Excellent. Welcome, Sergio. And as you mentioned, Jarrad, let's jump up to Jarrad himself.
So my name's Jarrad Marshall. I'm a developer with Orbx. I'm an airport developer, primarily on the ESP side of things. I also dabble a little bit in the other platforms as well. And as well as my own products, I also oversee many of the solo developers who also develop products through Orbx as well.
Awesome.
Oh, and sorry, because Sergio's here, just to jump in, just because Sergio's here, I'm also a really big helicopter enthusiast.
That's not what you told me earlier. Gosh, it's already started. We're like 2 minutes in and we're talking about helicopters. Oh dear. Anyway, thank you, Jarrad. Welcome. Magnus.
Yeah, hi. I'm the founder and CEO of Threshold, and Threshold tries to deliver a complete new platform for all of the users of flight simulation. We started with X-Plane, and now we're expanding to Microsoft Flight Simulator. And with that platform, we accidentally became your worst enemy, Calum.
You're not my worst enemy.
In the news market. No, it's kind of cool to see people assume that we're worst enemies, and behind the scenes we're talking to each other and everything's all right.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's Threshold and me.
Cool. Well, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today. Let's jump up to Andrew.
Hi, my name's Andrew Heath. I'm the owner and founder of Positive Control Network. It's an upcoming network, still in beta. We kind of trying to develop a community out of users that want air traffic control services and multiplayer experience with high refresh rates. my personal job is not only just the owner and founder, I also manage the product and the development team, which right now we have, it varies, but usually 8 to 10 developers right now. So that's it in a nutshell right now.
Busy. So I'm sure Sergio's going to ask if it supports helicopters, but I'm not going to let him chime in just
yes. I will.
It does.
Look at that smile. Cool. Well, thank you very much, Andrew, and welcome. And last but no means least, Evan.
I figured you're saving the best for last. That's good. So my name is Evan, one of the 2 co-founders of FlightSimExpo, which is one of several of these shows that we have around the world to try to bring simmers, developers, and media people together. The last show, of course, was in Orlando. We're supposed to be in Vegas about a month ago, but obviously things have changed a little bit. We're excited to hope 2021 goes off without a hitch. And then outside of FlightSimExpo, big community that I'm part of is the online world. So I'm a big proponent of how do we get these online networks like VATS and like Positive Control and others to be supportive of what simmers want, whether that be they want to just jump in and fly and have a great experience, or whether they want to be using the sim for training because they're looking to go to the airlines one day, or because they're looking to get their private license. And this is a great tool for that. So in addition to trying to help bring together on the FlightSimExpo in-person side, also think there's a great role that these online communities play in our development, and of course they support helicopters.
Oh man. Cool. Well,
you should know, Calum, you cannot invite me to this.
I was typing the email and I'm thinking this is going to be a helicopter chat, isn't it? But I thought, no, you have valid experience, so we'll invite you along.
And I haven't even done anything. I didn't touch the subject.
It's just your presence. Cool. Well, thank you, Evan. And as you said, we are saving the best for last because I haven't introduced myself yet. That's just a joke. So yeah, just very quickly, my name's Calum. I'm from the FSElite team, content director. Very similar to Sergio and Magnus. My role is basically to provide content to the flight simulation community for all of the different simulators, and hopefully try and encourage and inspire new people and give people informed decisions about products and stuff to pick up next, because this hobby is just growing and growing and growing into massive territory, especially over the coming months and weeks, which is exactly why we're all here today, is hopefully to discuss some of that future stuff as well. So with the introductions and stuff out the way, let's just jump straight into some of these big key topics. And I think the first one I think we need to really tackle is that announcement from Microsoft that the new sim is coming out on August 18th. So I think it all took us all by surprise, and certainly took the community by a surprise. So kind of just right off the bat, very wide open question. What's people's reaction and response to that release date being just less than a month away right now? Silence.
No one.
Well, we knew it was coming, right? So it was just a matter of when. I've seen a lot of excitement from folks I've talked to. You see that in the forums and the chats in the online world. Lots of people are excited about what it has to offer, but obviously, not a lot of people have seen it. Not a lot of people, when you're just talking the average simmer, know, I think, a lot of what to expect. So I would say there's probably a lot of excitement out there for what it offers, but I think a lot of people don't know what they're excited about. Quite honestly.
Weren't you guys surprised?
Yes.
I know I was surprised.
Very surprised.
I was expecting something like October release, November, something like that.
Yeah.
Something pre-Christmas, yeah.
Yeah,
and a beta run for that matter.
Yeah.
Where's that gone? There's no beta.
Yeah.
Still in alpha, so.
This is.
From our side of things, it's terrific that we've got. It's terrific that we've got a launch date, and it's earlier rather than later, because talking to the rest of the guys in Orbx, talking to other developers around the community, the key point of discussion in the last 6 to 9 months has been, we really need to know when that release date is, and the earlier it is, the better for us, because we are all planning projects, both for our existing platforms and for what's coming through with Microsoft Flight Simulator. And now we've got this date. That's terrific. So obviously with Orbx, we've got our roadmap. We're moving forward into all the aspects now that we've got that solid date. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a really good thing that it's earlier rather than potentially later on in the year.
Yeah,
But I've seen mixed feelings coming from developers. I'm not asking. I'm obviously not going to ask you anything regarding to the NDA or the status of the SDK or anything like that. But I've seen both sides, or I've seen different sides or different opinions coming from developers. People that, like you, that are excited about the release coming in August, while other developers are kind of worried because they didn't say anything in particular, but they said, well, yeah, there are some issues with the SDK. I'm obviously not asking you anything about the SDK, but do you guys feel comfortable about the release being this soon?
Listen, man, I think, there is when we say developers, there are so many different types of developers designing and creating so many different types of products that, to kind of reference this single document, the SDK, and say, it's ticking all our boxes, whether it's us as airport developers, us as larger scale scenery developers, or aircraft developers, or, anything across the spectrum. It's such a sort of a catch-all just to ask that single question. And what you're saying, Sergio, is exactly right, is that, I see the same things on FSElite, through the forums, on social media from different developers. And I think it's probably a matter of perspective, depending on what kind of product you're making and what kind of fidelity. So, I think it's going to be it's one case to be a developer making quite a simple product that's, going to be able to be hopefully ported over quite quickly. Versus, the top of the range aircraft developers who, their sort of their life cycle of their products might be 2-3+ years. And obviously that's a different kettle of fish altogether.
Yeah, I think that's really good points actually, in terms of there are lots of different types of developers out there making such a range of different types of products. And I just want to pick up on what you were saying, Magnus, about the beta transition seems to be relatively short. I mean, the last we heard is that currently the sim is in this tech alpha stage, and they've got all these people trying it out and providing feedback back to Microsoft. And then the closed beta was going to happen at the end of this month, which was brought forward by a couple of weeks. Is this really enough time to get all of those things kind of ironed out before that release, or do you think Microsoft are kind of aware of there might still be potential issues and it's going to be a case of moving forward they're going to still keep squashing bugs and stuff like that?
I suppose we'll find out in 4 to 5 weeks.
It's true.
Aren't they releasing it under a beta like preface? This is a beta that they're pre-selling. Wasn't that kind of how it was framed?
So I think the misconception was the Xbox Game Pass for PC is the thing in beta, like that brand thing in general, but the actual sim is the quote-unquote full release. I mean, that's the way I understood it anyway.
Well, my assumption, I just really want them to continue, make kind of like guarantees that they're going to continue development going forward, and hopefully within the next the next year or so, that we'll see a lot of development come through that, because I think a lot of people are hesitant to spend that kind of money up front without some assurances. I mean, they've left us before, and now this software has a lot of middleware, it seems like, because you have like the flight aware, things that get into the multiplayer. They've made, deals with a lot of different companies to make this happen. If they leave the platform and say, well, we're not going to develop anymore, then where does that leave us? It's a little nerve-wracking, I'd say, for the consumer.
Yeah.
What about, from your side as well, in terms of your investment and what you guys are working on? I imagine it's fairly nerve-wracking, given sort of, you're one of the, you're a developer who's working on very large time scales. How does that factor into your sort of mindset regarding exactly that?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, a lot of it translates pretty well, I'd say. Like the API they use called SimConnect, it translates pretty well for a lot of the development. So that's been really nice to work with. But, I'm just worried about the actual, as a person who likes to, buy all the flight simulators, buy all the add-ons and stuff like that. I always want to make sure that they are committed to moving forward for the next, year, maybe 2 years of developing this product out.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
it's right now, if you look at the P3D and the X-Plane world, so much of what we fly is add-ons, and it's stuff from Orbx, and it's stuff from other developers, right? So is all that stuff going to exist? Is all that stuff going to keep happening? Is that going to, be something that people can buy? If and I don't know what the day one platform looks like, and a lot of other simmers probably don't, right? So if what you get looks like what you got in 2006 from FSX, then you're going to want all that other content. And if it's not there in a few weeks after the release date, what's going to be the point until it starts to come out?
Yeah.
But this has kind of been the modus operandi of Microsoft for a long time, right? It's not the previous versions of Microsoft Flight Simulator, being FSX or FS 2004, or even the previous ones. We always had issues, and we always realized that Microsoft was pretty much aware. They had to be aware of some of those issues, and even Microsoft said that this is back in September they told us that this is a 10-year commitment for the company and for the development team. They have been saying that for a long time, so they seem to be committed on the long run. In regards with is the software finished or not, I think we should expect the same that we have already seen with the previous versions. Stuff will break.
Yeah.
For sure. And there's going to be some incomplete stuff as well, but they will be they will just continue working on it. That's what I have done for
like
years.
with every simulator out there.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess I
deep
compare it
and
to
complex.
X-Plane. Yeah, X-Plane continually gives you new betas. Vulcan, they just released Vulcan. So if they do something like X-Plane is done, then I would be a satisfied customer. Where they constantly keep updating it and stuff like that. So
I had the feeling
Yes,
that's what they want to.
definitely with that.
Yeah, I think that's what they want to do from what they said back in September. Now, that was the perception that I think that at least I had when we talked to them back then.
So as a
And the
customer,
key-
you might be satisfied with all these updates and stuff, but how do you think developers are going to react to constantly having to go back and forth, making sure that all these versions are supported? I mean, we've seen this transition this year, particularly with V5 and Vulcan. Developers are constantly almost chasing the tails of all the flight sim makers to try and make all their products compatible.
yeah.
It's certainly, something that we factor in, and I suppose certainly from our side of things, it's become much more standardized and factored into our development project roadmaps and the workflows of the individual teams compared to, say, 5 years ago. So if we think of the early days of P3D, so particularly version 1, really version 1 as senior developers was FSX, so there was really no work involved. So we had a clear 5 or 6 years where we didn't need to worry about any updates. We had a solid, stable platform that, for all its inherent flaws, was stable and unchanging. So when V2 came around in 2013, that was a real culture shock for us as a development team. In that we had to factor in that extra time to both in terms of making sure that our products going forward were compatible for all platforms. But not only that, even back in 2013, our back library was fairly large, and so just the time spent and the sort of the resources spent to port that was something that caught us a little bit off guard. And since then, obviously, we've had the full dot versions of P3D come through every year, 18 months or so. And also, as we expanded into X-Plane and Aerofly from 2017, that has taught us a lot in terms of how we sort of branch off our workflows and how we prepare ourselves from the clean sheet of a new product, how we factor that in, so that when we have, new points coming through, new features, we're ready to, move forward with it.
How easy is it to port things over, even between like P3D and X-Plane right now? I mean, is it a matter of just a few tweaks, or is it like you're building from the ground up with scenery?
Yeah, it depends on the product and depends on the type of scenery. So things like, the True Earth, we currently have one section of our team making new content for True Earth, and so that's either a new product for X-Plane, as has been sort of the priority in the last year, or it's a new product for P3D, and then we have another section or another sub team who do the conversion process For the airports, it's a little. We have different sort of models across the team. So some of our sub teams are making a product for both platforms up to about the 90% point, and then diverging. Some of the guys are making airports for one particular platform and then converting afterwards. And like we've got the formula down a lot tighter. In the early days of those conversions, they were massive tasks. So the first airport of mine that I ported over to X-Plane, it took the development time for porting was about 65% of the time that it took to develop a product from scratch. Obviously, that's a lot tighter now, and we're moving and we're continuing to refine the formula, so to speak. But yeah, it's the general rule of thumb is we always think it's going to be a little bit easier than it ends up being.
That's software development in a nutshell.
yeah.
So I want to bring the focus a little bit back to the community aspect. So Sergio and Magnus, obviously you run 2 successful media websites, and you can see all the community comments and stuff. So how do you think the community response has been to having all of these simulator options available? And now, of course, I know, Magnus, you focus primarily on X-Plane and upcoming Microsoft Flight Sim, and Sergio, you're very much helicopter focused. But have you seen any changes or differences in the community's opinion on all these new sims?
Apparently, X-Plane is dead.
Aren't all the other sims dead all of a sudden?
Everything is dead. This is the holy grail. It's Jesus coming to Earth.
Yeah, something very weird happened when Microsoft announced Microsoft Flight Simulator. All the sims in my computer just stopped working. So I can't wait to get Microsoft Flight Simulator because none of the other, it's just broke. It doesn't work. The community is hard. Very honestly, the community is hard. We see a lot of different and crazy things going out there. Yeah, Magnus,
well, either all of the other sims are dead, and then you have the other ones where it's just a game. It comes to Xbox, so it's a game by default.
Yeah.
And so you have the loud voices, but I think the majority of people are actually just being silent and waiting and are cautiously optimistic. It looks beautiful. There are some aspects of it where I would like me coming from the weather, and I've repeated this in other talks, that the weather looks fantastic. It's ultra romantic. I would like to see how it looks when it's mundane, when it's a bit boring, how it looks then. But so far, it is really beautiful. It's the most beautiful simulator I've seen to date, and for that, and we know, us who kind of come behind the scenes and have seen and also observe all the leaks and everything, we know that it is a simulator in the other end. So I'm excited. I'm really excited. I think most of the community is excited as well.
Well, I think the people who say that that Xbox, it's being produced for Xbox, so it's not a simulator. I think one of the driving forces behind why it's being produced is because of Xbox. So they should be thankful that it is, because I don't think Microsoft probably would have taken it on if it weren't. So
there's a huge thing with the Xbox that will bring a buttload of people into our community, and that will spill over to the other simulators as well. So people who come in with the Xbox, and portion of those will say, oh, okay, this is the simulator, I want to use this with other toys like a yoke and whatever. And once they got a PC set up, they'll see, oh, there's something called X-Plane, or there's something called DCS, and it will spill over to the other platforms, and that will spill over to all of the developer teams on the other platforms. I think the focus has been either like holy grail or extremely negative, but there are positive sides in between all of this. I think it will trickle down to everything that all of us do. Definitely.
Yeah,
for sure.
and I think that the community aspect is something. It's been very clear from how Microsoft have engaged, the community via channels such as FSElite. It's very clear that they are paying a lot of attention to what we as the community are saying, what the dynamic is, and what our expectations are. And I think for a platform that is both going to be aiming for this hardcore, very entrenched community, as well as the much larger general gaming and Xbox community, like that's a tough sell. But from everything that I've seen, like what we've seen in the trailers, how that, in their promotional videos and the occasional leaked content that we've seen elsewhere, it's very clear that they've done a lot of homework and they have been studying what we as a community have been doing for a long time. And we've got to give them the credit there, because certainly the other thing that sort of hangs over that head for those like me who've been around for a while is that obviously they seem to be learning a lot of lessons from Microsoft Flight back in 2012 as well. So sort of the approach in how they've approached the community side of things compared to what they did.
That's unheard of. They even apologize for Microsoft Flight.
Yeah.
You haven't yet. That's like
amazing.
in the gaming industry. That's like
Okay,
respect right there.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. It's clear that they don't want to have the same experience as they had in 2012, because that clearly didn't work. So they seem to be, at least from my sort of perspective, they're making stuff that is gearing to be on the right side for making the simmers happy, whilst looking beautiful and being appealing to the general market as well.
Yeah.
Part of the problem today with the platforms you have is if you're just a sort of aviation enthusiast, you can't really try before you buy. Like, you've got to dive right in. If you want to get an X-Plane sim, you're going to buy a new computer, you're going to buy a yoke, you're going to buy a bunch of add-ons, right? Like, there's no easy way to get started. So it's kind of interesting to see this platform come out where I'm really interested in flying. Here appears in my Xbox a flying game, and I can do it a little bit and go, okay, you know what? Yes, I want to do this. I want to take this to the next level. And as you just said, now let's go get the PC. Let's go get maybe X-Plane. Let's go get P3D. Or maybe it's let's buy a bunch of add-ons because Microsoft Flight Simulator is great. But I think having that really easy hook for people to get them interested for whatever it is, 50 or 60 bucks as a starting point, and then hopefully they get really drawn in. And that's something that we as a community have to work on. How do we get that fringe person who's a little interested in aviation, but they're not sure they want to really become a full-fledged simmer? How do we go and push them off the ledge and get them to jump in with us, right?
I mean, that's exactly why events like FSExpo are so imperative, really, isn't it? Is to get people to actually be hands-on and try all these things. So it's why it's so gutting, really, that we can't all be together doing all of this type of stuff. And hopefully Microsoft might have been a presence at kind of some of the shows this year to enable that hands-on experience for a lot of these people. And you talk about like the entry fee being like $60 and stuff, but there's also Xbox Game Pass, which if you're lucky enough, you can either get a free kind of trial, or it's like $1 or something really ridiculously cheap.
Right.
And the other advantages of that as well is there's already millions of people who have Xbox Game Pass, and as soon as that comes up, bang, they can go straight in, try it out, fly over the house, and who knows what kind of adventures and stuff they might then get themselves wrapped up in. So that, for me, is the most exciting part of this entire thing right now, is just how many more people, like you were saying, Magnus, can kind of come into this community and then spill into all these other corners of flight simulation. And it's not just about flying a plane, it's not just about looking at airports, but also going on like online networks such as POSCON, for example, right, to talk to air traffic controllers, to learn about like flight plans and weather. And this is just the beginning, I think, for a lot of people. So how do you think we then as a community can support and help all these newcomers with understanding what flight simulation is and the way I guess how it works? Because it's not like your traditional game, is it, where you can just download DLC. There's very specific elements you need to maybe add or build upon your base flight sim.
I think that
The
can
platform is important.
Yeah, that can be both an easy or a hard question to answer. Magnus was just going to probably say that the platform is important, but here's the thing: you can have good platforms, and you can have exactly the opposite, which is very toxic and very bad platforms, and we see that every day. Right?
Well, the platform has to be controlled, but it's like freedom under responsibility concept, that you have to kind of guide the platform. If you have a platform, if you build a platform, you are responsible for the feeling, or the what's it called, what's
The
happening
culture.
in there.
The culture.
Yeah, the culture,
actual
exactly.
culture,
Yeah. You're responsible for the culture you create, and if you let everything go out of hand, there are a lot of places on Facebook and wherever where I just don't go there anymore. And that's the ground philosophy, and kind of why I created, when together with Peter, created Threshold. And you too, you have your platform. Evan, you create an event platform for this, and I think the ones who create the platforms are responsible for what they have created. And
but there's a challenge.
It is.
I think there's a challenge.
Yeah.
But we do have a challenge ahead, which is
Don't
nowadays.
the conversation, but but control it.
Yeah, that's the thing. But I think the main challenge that we're going to see in the future is I don't see if you have noticed, but we started to see a whole new, I wouldn't say generation, but a kind of a wave of content coming from people from the community, which is actually misleading most of the time, because it gives you a lot of false information regarding the products, and we are seeing that a lot with Microsoft Flight Simulator, for example. You see people getting videos from Microsoft Flight Simulator, having some text-to-speech stuff on top of it, some of them providing false information in regards with content, and a lot of people are spreading that as being something that is true and reliable. I actually, Belgio, the Novo Wing 24, actually touched that on our latest video, which is our challenge as content producers, is to actually try and grab those people and get their eyes on our content, because we do work very hard to get our content as accurate, as true as possible. We know we have that responsibility towards the community. So the challenge here is, how do we get eyes from out of those content creators which are actually not bringing anything positive to the community, and get them to look at the content of people such as Calum and Magnus that are working hard to bring the actual news and the actual content that matters, that is true, and that actually educates people regarding what flight simulation in general, not just Microsoft Flight Simulator, but how flight simulation in general works, how the community works, how is it that people can learn how to fly. I think that's one of the challenges that we're going to have ahead, even more so as we get a lot more people coming into the hobby, because they are going to be drawn into it through Microsoft Flight Simulator.
I mean, one of my biggest bugbears, I think, is seeing all these Facebook groups and people asking what they assume is a stupid question, when in reality it's a very standard question which at some point all of us have probably asked, whether that be on Facebook or to our friends or whatever. And I try really hard to either answer those questions or to provide sources or information or something, but I cannot stand it when I see people just say, well, just Google it. I'm like, well, that doesn't provide the solution as such. That just, if you had that time to write Google it, then surely you have the time to also maybe support and help that person as well.
Well, I'd love to see the
beginner's guide.
Well, that's what I mean. The sim platforms themselves could play a role in that. So, I mean, not just Microsoft, but of course they are the big player here. Wouldn't it be great if you're an Xbox user, but you go to the Microsoft Flight Simulator website and it gives you, here's some great content. If you want to think about setting up a PC sim, go to this website. If you want to see the latest news and really be part of the community, visit HeliSimmer and FSElite and Threshold. And X-Plane and Lockheed, they could be doing that too. I mean, it could be right in the game. You know, you spawn up a flight and it says, hey, here's a pro tip. You're flying, you know, IFR on a 737. Here's a great website vetted by us at Microsoft that says, here's how you do this. I mean, wouldn't it be cool if we were actually directing people from right in the game to the websites and the sources that we know are great content? And then you don't have to worry about stumbling across someone's random YouTube video and they don't actually know anything and they're giving you false information. Here you are right in the game getting pointed to the resources that we already think are great.
That's an excellent idea. I would love to see that.
But there are politics in this. There are Well, it is. It's no hiding that Threshold and FSElite are competing in a market. We're here talking together, and we will definitely do stuff together, and we have a great conversation about stuff that we will be doing. And this could be one of those things. But for Microsoft to go in and prefer one or two elements in the community, okay, that's up to them. But okay, we can suggest it.
But I think even from a Microsoft perspective, obviously they've got the resources and the manpower to be able to look at how people are using the simulator and looking at the feedback through the forums and everything else, and create that sort of content themselves, because I'm pretty sure there's going to be some kind of tutorial thing. I mean, we saw it in previous simulators before. I mean, we all remember the instructors that came on screen and talked you through some of the stuff, right? So I don't see why in the future they could not create series of video content and articles. I mean, look at their Discovery series, really going in depth about some of those features. So I think there's possibilities that for them to do that, and hopefully we see that, so then the likes of all of us can then just point people to the official sources and give them that information.
But I'd love, from my perspective, I'd love to see Microsoft making people like you the official sources too. Like, you know, do I really want to hear from somebody who doesn't know much about flight simulation talking about how to fly flight sim, right? I would way rather hear somebody who's been part of this community for the last 10 or 15 years and who's been building it up with the rest of us while Microsoft has not been involved. I'd love to hear someone like that talk about flight simulation. I'm not as interested in somebody who's never really been involved in flight sim except when Microsoft said, hey, would you like to do this, you know?
I mean, if you looked at like all of my landing rates, you really won't want me trying to tell you how to land a plane, that's for sure. So I want to...
I second that. Just kidding. Just kidding.
So I want to just diverge the conversation over to you, Andrew, about some more... and then we've talked about flying and stuff, but there's obviously this element of network and trying to communicate online and stuff. Now, there are different outlets out there who do very similar things, but what do you think could be done to help educate simmers for that communication aspect and actually flying online with friends and people they may not have even known before?
Well, I think recently, within the last year, you've seen some on other networks, like some drive to provide mentoring, like pilot-to-pilot mentoring. I don't know how successful that's been outside of my little sphere, but like internally within our organization with the testers that we have, we've tried pilot-to-pilot stuff and it's been very successful. We would love to see more shared cockpit capabilities, and I think there's a couple of developments going on right now with like X-Plane that are really promising. Shared flight by FlyJuly sim is you know, I'm a tester, I'm not going to go too in depth, but it's really good. I'm just going to say that. I think there's capabilities there, but it needs to be expanded to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and Prepare 3D. I'm not sure there's like a lot of good solutions out there, but that would be the ideal solution. But there is still more you can do with Discord and other, you know, communication platforms that allow shared screens. And we've been, you know, testing a lot with that, and we actually are going to probably offer some of those services through POSCON in the future. So it really is good, and that's just that. I mean, not only does that, you get to an experienced person with maybe a novice person, and they'll work both on, you know, both on like how to fly the aircraft, how to talk on the radios, but even though things like a question about which content is good would probably arise in those conversations too. So, I mean, pilot to pilot mentoring, I think, is really important going forward.
We see that question a lot at FlightSimExpo and from people who attend the show. Is they're like, I would just love to spend 30 minutes with an expert because I have this and this and this add-on, but I can't make them work really well together. And if I go to this add-ons forum, they're just going to say, well, I can only support myself, right? Like, you know, Orbx isn't going to say, here's how you should configure your X-plane necessarily. But if you had some expert out there or someone who's been doing this for a long time, you know, I get this question all the time. Can't you just find someone who's really close by me, who's an expert, to come to my house and like just fix these 5 or 6 things on my sim? You know, like, could there be a geek squad for flight simmers?
Yeah.
I get that question all the time, and I would love to say yes, but like there isn't right now.
Right. And it's not just like learning procedures and how to fly an airplane, how to talk to them. It also comes down to like cockpit building. Like there's some experts out there that are just, they know how to do every aspect of cockpit building. So.
Oh, that'd be amazing. I'd love that in my garage. I need to find that person as well.
Yeah.
I need to find the money for that.
And there is also that. And then Jarrad as well, for like yourself. I mean, we're talking about bringing new people into flight simulation, but from a developer's perspective, surely having more people interested in video game production and stuff like that is also going to be beneficial from kind of your perspective to build up your repertoire of developers and ultimately make more products for us flight simmers as well.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, we're sort of gearing up for that in terms of the trying to, you know, we've been quite creative in the kind of things that we're looking at with our roadmap. But you're exactly right. You know, with the new influx of people into the community in a very, you know, in a once in a flight sim generation kind of way, we get a whole bunch of new ideas, we get a whole bunch of new perspectives, and that's really good for us because we thrive on those new ideas. We thrive on that sort of organic growth that comes from the community. Like we saw exactly the same thing from a scenery development point of view with X-Plane 11, because you know, X-Plane 11 sort of being a real benchmark in the last couple of years from those guys, and for us sort of getting into that, it really made us think a little bit differently because we've been developing for a single platform for quite a while. And I'm expecting a lot of that with, you know, with Microsoft Flight Simulator coming through, not only with the community, but also just a totally different, basically a totally different palette to work with. And, you know, there's sort of, as well as the you know, the new flight simulator generation, what we're expecting, what I'm certainly expecting, is a lot of more young people coming into flight sim as well, which is really important. And the kind of products that we think about, you know, that's something that I'm thinking about certainly coming through. And that's a really good thing because we all know that the flight simulator community is extremely loyal. It's generally, you know, it has a greater longevity than, you know, a lot of other sort of parts of the gaming world and the gaming communities. And we know that our demographics are quite unique in the gaming world. Like it presents many opportunities. It also presents a whole bunch of different problems as well. But having that new generation of young people coming through, that's really terrific. Getting them excited about flight sim from our perspective, getting them excited about the kind of products that we make, that's great because we, you know, it feeds us, and also exactly as you say, it breeds through the next generation of guys who are looking at becoming developers, whether that's sort of, you know, casually or whether they're looking at making a career out of it. Like we see now the path that can be made. We have guys in our team who are coming through, and yeah, this is an exciting time.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that. I mean, from a media perspective, I think we've seen, you know, plenty more developers coming through all the time, announcing stuff left and right. I mean, the workload has just continued to shoot up for all of us, I think, from that perspective. And to hear Microsoft said that they've had 250 people now with the SDK and over 400 applications, that to me already speaks volumes to the amount of people who are interested in kind of working with this flight simulator as well.
Yeah.
We've spoken a lot about Microsoft, and obviously there are two other kind of primary sims out there at the moment. X-Plane 11 is currently going through an awfully long beta testing cycle for Vulkan. I mean, we got two experts in that platform, in particular Sergio and Magnus, much more so than probably what I am. So what are your thoughts at the moment on that platform and the current beta process that's been going through?
You want to go ahead, Magnus?
It's a huge change for Explain, and they want to do it right, I guess. I'm kind of myself. I'm kind of in the middle of developing other stuff, so I'm kind of stuck on the 11.41 platform, and I haven't been that active on the Vulkan. So it has been a long time. When did they start? That was like...
Well, they're on beta 15, so I don't know how often they've been releasing things, but
wasn't it at the end of 2019, something like that?
Yeah, around there. So
yeah, it's expected, right? It's something. It's not like they're just adding a couple of little features. They're changing the game engine.
Yeah.
It's not an easy feat. Yeah, it's not an easy feat. I'm actually surprised we didn't have any more issues during the first betas, to be honest, because with the amount of hardware people have out there, I was expecting just, for them to release beta 1 and everything to explode. So, honestly, kudos. They have done an excellent job. Now, of course, this is going to take a while. They told us that from the start, that this is going to be a long process. So,
and nothing external will even budge Austin in just going his course. The fact that Microsoft is releasing on the 18th, he couldn't care less.
That is one of the things that people just don't get it. Austin does what Austin wants to do. Period.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's why we have one of the best. Yeah, that's why we have up until now at least have had the best flight model in Explain, and that is his baby. That's basically all he does still in Explain. He has other projects, but yeah.
So do you think this new engine will kind of keep Explain going for like a long period of time?
Yeah.
The
very
Vulkan
relevant.
Will open up for so much. It won't be like the peak of performance for everyone. Like lower end machines will see a good performance increase, but it won't be like the revolution right now. But it will open up for a broad spectrum of possibilities for Explain going forward, and it will open up for stuff that that they have been talking about, like weather, improving weather within Explain, and also improving autogen. And even if Austin doesn't really care for orthos and real photography, it will open up for that as well. And I think they might be pushed in that direction in the future. I don't know. Yeah. Austin is the head of the team, but he is dependent on his team, and I think there are voices within that team that will in the future say, hey, let's find a solution that can compete with Bing and Microsoft in the future. Not this year, maybe not next year, but going forward, they will definitely be able to develop Explain further with that platform.
This is just the first iteration. Laminar Research has always said that. This is not the final implementation of Vulkan. What we are seeing here is just them converting the engine to Vulkan to then start working on the actual engine and start adding things such as multi-core support, etc. So what we're seeing now is the basics for the implementation of Vulkan, but it's a poor implementation in the sense that they are not taking the most out of our hardware. Okay, so this is just the basic stuff. They're just taking care of the basics, and very honestly, I think it was very lucky for them that they had started working on Vulkan a long time ago, because right now, I'm not one of those guys that say that the survival of any sim depends on the next sim. So I'm not saying that all the other sims are dead because of Microsoft Flight Simulator, but I think that right now, if Laminar hadn't started working on Vulkan some years ago, years I think so, they would be in a very bad position in the future. They would be in very, very, very troubled waters. Fortunately, that's not the case.
Yeah, what I'm thinking, and I'm not really into P3D, and I have my thoughts, but they have basically no value because I'm not into P3D. But where does it leave P3D in all of this? For you P3D guys,
I think P3D. I think quietly, I think they're still going to have a strong market. There are various aspects, obviously, based on what they have today and based on their track record of both, fixing issues that they have in the sim or upgrading the tech, and also just we've seen 8 years of continual, consistent, and timely upgrades to the platform, and obviously for them, they're in a unique position out of the 3 primary platforms in that the community side of things, the community consumer side, is only one portion of their business. Obviously, they have their commercial and their military side, which I am sure is driving a lot of the features that go into the new platform, into the new versions, and are probably driving a lot of the decision making going forward. But obviously, for us today, we're looking at the community side of things, and I think probably where I see there is still legs in P3D going forward, and I think in X-Plane too. But the sophistication of and the maturity of the add-on market in P3D is going to take some time to go over to Microsoft. We don't know. That's the great unknown, for all the different development houses. As I was talking about earlier about, I'm thinking of the aircraft developers who have extremely long roadmap timelines for their projects. We have that existing. We have in P3D, a whole bunch of core products across all the different areas, and they're going to be there for a long time. How quickly that moves over to Microsoft, how quickly consumers decide to switch over, I don't know, but I see probably there's going to be a little bit of conservatism for those that like their products and particularly that have their sims set up the way that they want. And I think that's a reflection of the community. That's also a bit of a reflection on, again, that sort of skewed age demographic. I think that we see a little bit.
I have a question. I have a question about P3D V5. Do you think that was pushed due to Microsoft terms, coming out, was pushed because it dropped really suddenly without a lot of foreshadowing? And then do you think that they're going to be prevented from doing stuff going forward for a while?
I have my theories, but there's none that I'm going to air publicly. And none of them are founded in 100% knowledge. Again, as I was saying, I base what I expect they're going to do on their track record, both as developers of a platform and sort of their engagement with the developer and just the general community, in that we have had a long time. We know that issues that have cropped up in the previous version, so V2 particularly gave us as senior developers a lot of headaches. We know that they have fixed those issues going forward, and it hasn't taken forever for those fixes to come through. So obviously there are a few things at the moment with V5 particularly around the VRAM issue. I'm fairly confident that we're going to see improvements to that is going to make the platform much more stable for particular users who are having those issues. Like, that just comes purely from the historic aspect of how they've done things in the past, and I don't see any reason why that would change.
I think it was... So, in terms of your question about the release dropping suddenly, I think back to V4, and I don't recall that ever having like a week's build up to a release. So
Same.
I remember V4 was leaked by a couple of developers accidentally, and then some people stumbled upon some of the assets that they were going to use in like their WordPress website and stuff. So I think that was the indication we had, but no one had like an early indication it was going to drop, and then suddenly we had a 64-bit platform that fundamentally changed that ESP engine for forever, basically, because we were stuck on 32-bit, and although VRAM is now the issue, originally it was the RAM stuff. So I don't think it was dropped suddenly. I think it was maybe we were used to the kind of the PR side of things. Obviously Microsoft with big flashy trailers, and Laminar Research obviously being a bit more consumer based, were a little bit more directed in teasing updates and stuff like that. But Laminar have always been very quiet. Not Laminar, Lockheed have always been very quiet in terms of how they work and how they bring stuff out. I think just like we saw with V4, I mean, it wasn't a perfect release from that initial version. I mean, it took us several hot fixes and again point releases to get to a stable version that people were happy with. And like with any big major release, we're always going to see that delay with like developers building their products for the new platform, especially when there's a new rendering engine involved. I mean, just like with the X-Plane side of things with Vulkan, Lockheed went to DX12, so there's always going to be some, I think, issues or bugs and stuff. But I feel like, and we were having this conversation the other day, Andrew, but it does feel like all of these sims are currently in some kind of like testing phase at the moment, and unfortunately us simmers are like the guinea pigs at the moment, trying to look at all the add-ons and look at all the peripherals and stuff and feeding that back to these developers to try and fix and to resolve.
Yeah.
There's something very interesting that you, Jarrad, were mentioning about people migrating from Bit3D to the new platform and whatnot. And there's something that's going to be very interesting for us to watch next, which is, it's one thing for Laminar Research to drop X-Plane 11, and all of a sudden people starting to look at X-Plane 11. Some of them left Bit3D for this platform, but in the past people have moved from platform to platform. We had FSX and X-Plane and whatnot. Now we have something which could be very interesting for the market, which is we have the entry, we have a new product coming into the market, and we may be seeing something very interesting, which is not a migration movement from P3D, for example, which is the platform that we're talking about. We may not be seeing this movement right away where people migrate from P3D to Microsoft Flight Simulator, but we have this huge company, Microsoft, with this amazing and huge marketing machine, Microsoft Flight Simulator coming to Xbox. So we may actually see, instead of seeing people having this mass and people migrating within this mass, we now have something interesting, which is we have a bigger mass or a big mass from outside the market coming into the market, into a new flight sim. And instead of you seeing the numbers drop from P3D, for example, because they are rising on the Microsoft Flight Simulator side, we just see the numbers rise on the Microsoft Flight Simulator side without the drop on P3D. I am very interested to see what is going to happen to developers, because companies like Orbx or other companies, you are used to a certain amount of business coming monthly or yearly or so, right? Now, developers that are developing for P3D, they may not actually see a decrease of market in P3D, but rather having this other sim increasing and probably surpassing the numbers. What will these developers do? Will they just keep on working on P3D because, they already know the platform, it's selling well, they are keeping the steady flow of cash coming in? Or are they going to actually look into the other platforms, trying to learn that other platform and trying to migrate to the other platform because it will bring them more money? I'm not asking you if Orbx is going to do that. I'm just saying that this is going to be very interesting to see.
Mate, I think like any developer with, not speaking with my Orbx hat on, I think, any developer needs to be agile, and if you're not, you're dead in the water. And, whether that is, obviously Microsoft is the big new shiny thing, the big new shiny toy that all the developers are looking towards at the moment, and we obviously want to be developing for. But you're exactly right. The point that you make about is the P3D or the X-plane market going to change? Is it going to increase with influx of non-simmers coming into the community? Is it going to decrease? I think we need to be agile. We need to be prepared to go in any direction, and whether that's making sure that we, developers might be developing products specific to different platforms, whether they're trying to make a single product across all platforms. I think the next 6 months is going to be a really interesting time. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the market and how those platforms skew. I mean, the big elephant in the room that we haven't talked about yet is what's going to happen to the FlightSim 9 crowd, and whether whether that's the time for them to move along. I mean, we joke, but that's sort of, again, it's sort of a sign. We saw how long there was a decent market for FS9 products well into the life of FSX and ESP. From Orbx, it was a day one decision for us that we were only developing from FSX onwards, but we still occasionally get the FS9 question in the forums, and we, judging by other developers and the fact that they were still releasing FS9 products up until not too long ago, clearly there was enough of a market there.
I think it's some really interesting points, and something I haven't considered until now is obviously the likes of Orbx and all these other big developers with multiple people, they can be more flexible and agile, but smaller independent developers where there's only one or two people, they have to focus on one thing or another. It's going to be very difficult for them to start multi-developing for different sims, and I get the impression, especially from the last couple of days, of all these developers announcing, hey, we're going to develop for the new Microsoft sim, we may suddenly see a big decrease in production of products coming out for the likes of P3D and X-Plane, because they have to now spend the next 6 months, like you said, learning the new SDK, learning the new tools, and trying to bring a product out for something completely brand new. So for them, this is going to be a year of basically research and development. So there could be a big decrease in availability across all platforms because people are now realigning their efforts onto different ideas.
Well, they'll just keep on doing because they didn't decrease any sales. That was kind of my point. It's going to be very interesting to see what these companies are going to do, because they will have different strategies for sure.
Yeah. So before we kind of wrap things up, I just want to go around the room and just see where you're kind of at in terms of what you're most excited for in the next couple of months. So if we start up with yourself, Evan, so what are you most looking forward to in the flight simulation space over the next 6 months?
I think for a lot of developers, and even to some extent for us in the online world and with FlightSimExpo, it's a little bit been a waiting game to see what is Flight Simulator going to do. Are we going to see all these things we just talked about happen or not? So I'm excited to just see what's going to happen. Like, it's nice that there's finally an end date to the waiting. It's nice that if you're a developer who's been saying, should I develop this product for P3D or should I not? You finally got that push to say, okay, now it's time to start doing things. So I'm excited for that. And then, of course, for just the growth that I would expect to come from the community, that Xbox crowd who is an aviation enthusiast, or they may be a wannabe pilot, or they may be looking for that next training tool. This is that opportunity to hopefully, as a community, grab those people and say, come on in, we've got a great opportunity, literally whatever you want to do and whatever your aviation objectives are, there's a group for you, there's a developer for you, there's a product out there that will do what you want. So I'm excited to see how that works, and I hope that we can help to just fuel that passion for aviation that so many people have, with Microsoft Flight Sim or Xbox kind of being the hook that gets them started.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And what about yourself, Andrew? What most excites you?
I agree 100% with what Evan said. I think that fresh blood into the community is always a good thing. Because you can kind of mold people. Like, when they come in, they're new, they don't know what they're doing, and you can kind of say, well, this is what these are some suggestions, what you can do to make yourself a pilot, a better community member. This is the places you should go for content. You can kind of like direct them and steer them, and I think that's really an advantage, and it's just good to have more people involved in the whole thing. So I'm excited for that.
For sure. Jarrad?
I think, just jumping off your guys' points as well, I think that it's really exciting that over the next couple of months, we're going to be the rare time where the general gaming community, the spotlight's going to be on our little section of the world for at least the short term, and that's really exciting. It's a way for us to showcase what we do to people that otherwise wouldn't necessarily think of it. Like, I think of my mates who barely know what I do in Orbx, who have just seen this and are really excited about this and are using this as, using that as a way to learn a little bit more about what we all do. I've never seen anything like it. We didn't have it with FSX. It's a really exciting time from that sort of perspective. And then from me as a developer and from an Orbx point of view, it's really exciting because we've been working really hard on our roadmap. We've got a lot of stuff that is cooking in the background at the moment, and it's going to be really exciting to show that to the community over the coming sort of short term. Like, there's a lot of things that we've been working very hard towards, and obviously we haven't lifted the lid fully on what we're doing yet. And for us as developers, that's really exciting. Like, it's a big thrill when we get to sort of show and tell what we've been working on.
It's just a shame you didn't have a big event to show and tell it at this year.
Oh well, there'll always be next year.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting. Jarrad brings up that point about the people who you wouldn't expect that started to post social media posts. Like, this isn't by no means a scientific thing, but on my social feeds, I saw people, pilots, real world pilots, starting to share Microsoft, and I'm like, what is going on here? I thought I was in my own little like little world, and now other people that I wouldn't have expected are sharing stuff. I'm like, it's interesting for sure.
Yeah, same here. Like, people who are in the real world aviation industry, maybe they're commercial airline pilots or whatever, that you could say explain to them and they would have no reaction. But they're coming to me and they're like, have you heard about Microsoft Flight Simulator? This is so cool. And I'm like, yes, I have, actually. Let me tell you some things.
I mean, that's super interesting because, so even outside of like pilots and stuff, like people who I'm into with video games and stuff, they're like, have you seen a new Microsoft sim? And they're excited. And I'm just thinking, this isn't no longer a flight sim community bubble type thing. This is the gaming press in general are like covering this like crazy. I mean, the number of articles from mainstream sites is insane. So that makes my life easier to try and explain to people what I do for a living. Is I work with flight simulation, and like, oh yeah, I get it now. And I'm like, oh, thank God for that, rather than having to try and explain what I do.
Now it's a job. Now you have a job. You were job.
Yeah. Before I
Either
just
that or you work for Boeing or Airbus or something. So they're either like, whoa, or what?
So what about yourself, Sergio? I mean, the new sim doesn't necessarily have helicopters and stuff, but I'm sure there's plenty still to come for the next 6 months for yourself that you must be excited about.
I'm excited about the sim itself. What's coming ahead is exciting. The sheer fact that we are helping shape this sim, and that Microsoft is listening to us and they are trying to do this the best they can, it's just exciting. And the fact that it doesn't actually come with helicopters, it's not bad in the sense that there's a reason why helicopters are not in the sim, and I agreed with the reason, so they want to do them properly, which just makes it double the fun because as you know, they told us that the community would be involved in helping them get helicopters done the proper way. So I see the next 6 months or a year, whatever it takes to get the sim coming together in the future, as very interesting, and for me especially very fun. It's going to be very cool to see. I'm a developer, as you know, so it's going to, even from that side, from that perspective, it's very cool for me to watch all these little pieces of the puzzle coming together and making a product that, let's face it, guys, every single one of us was waiting for and expecting for. Microsoft is just getting the puzzles, everything that we have thought about in the past. Oh, what about if we had Google Maps or Bing Maps? Well, no one thought about Bing Maps. Let's be honest. What if we had Google Maps? And what if we had real-time aircraft, going around? What we have this and that, and Microsoft is doing that, and it's just exciting. So yeah, I'm a happy puppy, even without helicopters right now.
At the moment. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And last but not least, Magnus, what are you most looking forward to, being in the unique position that you're in right now?
A couple of things. One being definitely like people that I didn't know were into anything with computers other than Excel sheets. I'm in the IT consultant business, so but people there are like, they understand what I do now. I'm kind of excited for the editorial to have more to write about than just Microsoft provided content. Like more add-ons coming in, seeing the whole scene shift over to developing for something that is definitely beautiful, getting more experience in that simulator and kind of build my own expectations of what to come. Like Orbx, you have some really huge work in front of you. Other than that, it's we've been talking a lot about Microsoft Flight Simulator, but it's okay. It's the zeitgeist, I guess. For myself, Xenviro has been like in development for as long as Xplane has announced Vulkan, so I'm really excited to get that one out, hopefully pretty soon. And this kind of panels, this kind of corporations, and hearing what you guys have to say going forward, I guess, is also something that I'm really looking forward to. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I'm really thankful everyone's here today to talk about this. This has been really, really cool. I'm a bit nervous about the future, if I'm being completely honest. I think there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of build-up, and there's a lot riding on this simulator doing something new and exciting for people, and I don't disagree. It looks absolutely stunning. I think from the experience I've had, it has a lot of possibility in future. I just think there still needs to be that same drive and commitment from third parties, from the community, to make this a success as well. I think we talk about Microsoft having all this marketing power, and it's great that they can throw all this money behind it and put it on Xbox or whatever, but ultimately it is the community and it's the third parties that have kept flight simulation alive for so long, whether that be FSX, P3D, or even Xplane. So that for me makes me nervous, because we still need to have all of these developers still around, and it is scary when we see comments all the time of I'm not buying anything until Microsoft's new Sim's out, and ultimately we still need these guys around to be able to provide this amazing content for all of us. So whilst I am excited for the Sim, I'm nervous that we're not going to see much in terms of new add-ons for a little while, because of all these developers going through this kind of phase that we haven't really seen in a very long time. And I'm also nervous that all these new people coming in will be scared, because it is such a daunting experience to come into flight simulation for the first time. So excited and nervous, definitely, but hopefully we have the right people in kind of these important roles within the community, whether that be the social media influencers, the Twitch streamers, developers, media outlets, to be able to guide and to help and support these people as well. So that makes me super excited, in being in the media. Hopefully I can help influence that, along with all the other amazing content creators as well. And collectively, despite this perception of competition, and there is an element of that, I guess, but ultimately we're all here to provide for the community in some way, shape or form. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting 6 months, and if not longer, for all of us, I think, regardless of our role in flight simulation.
Good points. So
yeah, I think that about wraps everything up on my list. This is why I keep kind of turning my head onto the other screen. Is there anything else anyone else wanted to just kind of touch upon very quickly, or real good to sign off?
Let's hope that we get an expo next year.
Yeah.
You will.
Yeah.
It may not be in person depending on what happens, but there will be something.
Yeah, it's depending on what happens that I'm anxious about, but yeah, let's definitely hope that it will be next year, yeah.
No, we know we need to do something. Whether we can all get in together physically, or whether it's a few of us physically and some of us joining online, we need something. It's been already too long since the last one, so we'll have something for sure.
That's an interesting idea, though. Having something that we can kind of meet up and have something regardless, and have something for the community, even if not everyone can show up as a crowd.
Yep,
just meet
absolutely.
and have something, build something that hasn't existed before. Pretty cool.
Yeah, awesome. And maybe we can do stuff like this more often. I don't know. See how the community reacts and how you guys feel after this, really.
Well, I'm gonna have to get a green screen because Sergio
I know. I like the ability to just change it like for him, so that we could just make there be different pictures in the background. Like one could be a big alligator eating his head, and one could become a fixed wing airplane. So you'd have to like try and hide it. That'd be cool. A little remote control for it.
And my boom has constantly been going down, so I'm like, yeah. For next time.
Well, I'm just gonna wrap this thing up then. So firstly, thank you to Evan, Jarrad, Andrew, Sergio, and Magnus for joining us today on this, I don't know still what to call it, but hey, flight simulation panel. I don't know, as part of the FlyJuly event that Orbx are kindly putting on for us. Thank you so much for everyone watching, and again, thank you to you guys for taking part. And yeah, we'll see you around the flight simulation community.
See ya.
See you later.
Take care. Bye bye.